Hey, how's it going, everyone? Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the broadcast. We have, instead of Broadcaster Roundtable, an interesting new series we were starting called Broadcaster Profiles. And we have with us a really interesting broadcaster many of you may be familiar with from other platforms as well as Happs. But how's everyone doing today? First of all, Helen, good to see you in first today from Edinburgh. Awesome. Who else do we have here? Amani, welcome. Hello from Texas. Yeehaw. Awesome to see you in the house here. Very enthusiastic. That's great. The professor from Phoenix, thank you so much for tuning in and spending part of your day with us, everyone. Without further ado, I will introduce our special guest here, a broadcaster. Many of you may know Michael Audie, a veteran journalist and live streamer, otherwise known as Mike Tends to Travel. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Thanks so much for joining us on this special edition where we get to take a bit of a deeper dive, getting to know individual broadcasters. And, you know, we're really excited to have you here today as our first guest, our guinea pig on this new show.
Oh, wow. I'm the first. Wow. I didn't
You
even realize.
Yes, yes. So no pressure or anything, but
Right.
no, just kidding, man. How's everything going on your end? Hey, Alex, your app works. You may see some folks from the comments. Feel free to greet folks, answer questions. Yeah, Helen says no pressure.
Hi. I'm seeing some few folks here. Hey, Lisa. How are you? Long time, Lisa. Good to see you here.
Yeah, lots of familiar faces. Great to see. Oh, Andrew from Scotland in the house. Andrew had an amazing broadcast with the snow and some really cool visuals. I believe a sunset there. Lost. Hello from Stockholm. So really cool international audience today, Mike, for this conversation. Really neat to see everyone here. Yes, and Pablo is behind the scenes, Swift, producing as usual, making the magic happen. Absolutely. Great. So, Mike, for those who may not be familiar with you here, can you just introduce yourself and how you got into broadcasting? I know that this isn't the first live stream platform you've been on.
Yeah, I actually started while I was living in Beijing, in China. That's when some folks will remember Meerkat way back when, about 5 years ago now, more than 5 years ago. Meerkat. I started
Right.
on Meerkat, and then Periscope came out a bit after, and then Twitter got involved with Periscope. So I hopped over to Periscope on the first day they launched, and just started kind of. I watched maybe a couple of broadcasts from Beijing, and then I went live from my first broadcast was actually from my apartment in China, and then folks are really kind of like, "Whoa, are you really in China? Yeah. Do you really live in China? Yeah, but you're black. Yeah." So, so it went from there, and then of course, China is a very interesting place in terms of stuff. So I just started live streaming every Friday. I would go out with another broadcaster. We'd go out all over Beijing and other places and just kind of broadcast. The Forbidden
That's
City,
great.
you name it, a bunch of places. Yeah.
That's amazing. What took you over to China originally?
I was actually I remember being in Portugal on a beach, a beautiful beach in Portugal,
Wow.
and I was living in Portugal at the time. And then a friend of mine in on Facebook sent me a message saying, "Hey, would you be interested in coming to China to work for the newspaper, the China Daily?" And my first reaction was, "Hell no! Why would I want to move to China?" I had been there before. I
Hmm.
had been there before to cover the fourth World Conference on Women that Hillary Clinton was there and so on. So I had been to China before, but I started thinking about it because the message popped up again. I said, well, it would be a bad thing to kind of go for a year under a
Hmm.
contract and work for state-run media. I've never worked
Interesting.
for media before, and I
Hmm.
thought, it would be nice to kind of see what it's like to work for a state-run media. So I applied. You had to apply, got
Hmm.
accepted, did the 1 year contract, and that's how I ended up in Beijing. I ended up renewing the contract for another year. I ended up spending 2 years, so that's how I ended up there. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's fascinating. And how was it working there for Chinese state-run media? I'm assuming it was in English, unless your
Yeah.
Mandarin is better than I imagine.
Yeah, it was in English. It's an English language newspaper, and it's all over the world. China Daily is actually global. I mean, they even have a bureau in New York.
Yep.
And
I've read the China Daily. Yep.
yeah, so I was what was called a foreign expert. They hire English-speaking journalists to edit the stories of Chinese, mainly Chinese staff.
Right.
And I was taking Chinese Mandarin lessons too. So little by little, I left China knowing more Mandarin than I did going, because now I can
I'm sure.
characters and so on. But
Right.
But it was interesting, and I always sort of joked with my some of my friends there that working for state-run media, Chinese media, is basically we're working for a big public relations company. I mean, that's the way I looked at it, because you were restricted in terms of some things you could say, you couldn't say, what you could publish, couldn't say anything bad about the president.
I'm sure.
And so on. So that's kind of what it was like, just PR, propaganda.
So that's interesting, right? Essentially, working in PR, and having that. Was that your first experience in China then, for an extended period when you went to work for the China Daily?
Yeah, I had been there. I spent a month because, as I said before, I was working for the Oregonian, and I went to cover that UN conference on women, the fourth one. And I ended up staying a few days longer, and then I traveled to Hong Kong and so on. So it was only a couple of weeks, maybe just about 3 weeks in China. Very different in the 90s than it is today. Very different. It's amazing.
Sure.
It was all bicycles when I was there. When I went
Right.
back to live there, it was all fancy cars.
Yep.
Yeah.
No doubt. When I've traveled there, it's been amazing, the changes I've seen between just a few years in Beijing alone. But I'm sure that was a pretty dramatic difference between going from the Oregonian to Chinese state media, and then now back, obviously, at the Los Angeles Times, where you are an editor there and work on the international desk. So tell us about the contrast between those and what you learned in that process. And we'll get back to broadcasting. Don't worry, we'll talk about that, guys. I'm just curious to hear about Mike's journey here as a journalist myself.
Before Oregonian, I moved to Miami. And I was at the Miami Herald, where I became a general assignment reporter for Enterprise, which really meant I could do whatever I wanted to do, whatever I wanted. I mean, literally. I mean, I'd come into the office on a Monday, and I'd say to my editor, I'm going to do a story this week on golf balls. And he would look at me like I'm crazy. And then I'd go off and do it, and it would be a page one story, because that's how my brain works. I'd see certain things, and I ended up doing a lot of page one stories for the Miami Herald at the time, just Enterprise stuff. I mean, off the beat kind of stuff. Yeah. And then I became a foreign correspondent, which is what I really wanted to do. Got it. So I ended up doing covering Latin America and the Caribbean. That was my beat.
So you really do tend to travel. It sounds like you've bounced around all over the place, and as a journalist and a live streamer, right? Tell us about what led you to start broadcasting initially, and really kind of some of your most memorable early experiences as a broadcaster that led you to keep wanting to do it more.
Well, I mean, I started out with my YouTube channel, because these apps did not exist at the time, the live streaming apps. Right. So when I was traveling, I was doing videos on my YouTube channel. And Mike Tends to Travel is a YouTube. Mike Tends to Travel all over the place. And so when live streaming came in, I thought, oh, maybe I'll try this live, interacting with folks. And as I said before, I was in China at the time, and that's where I started. And it was a fascinating place to live stream from, because people were seeing things, meaning around the world, in the US and so on, that they weren't seeing. I mean, I believe it was one of the first to do a live stream from the Great Wall of China,
Wow.
climbing the Great Wall. This was literally what they call wild Great Wall. It hasn't been repaired. It's out in the middle of nowhere. It's sort of falling down, and I did a live stream from there, which was amazing because I got a connection, and people were like, "Wow, this is fascinating." So people were really interested in it in China and seeing it and the things I was showing them. I look back on the broadcasts I do now, and I'm not bragging, but removing my name from it. And I look at those broadcasts, I'm just blown away by the stuff that I was able to show across China. It was like I did the Terracotta Warriors, for example.
Yep.
Just a lot of stuff that's really old and has been there forever, and people and interviewing people and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I got into it. Just switch from doing just straight up videos to decided to go live and do live streaming. Yeah.
So that's really fascinating. It sounds like you really enjoy the travel aspect, but also cultural exchange and education too. So many people have so many questions about, I'd imagine, the Terracotta Warriors alone, you could do hours and hours answering questions on scene, showing people details. That's amazing. Tell us about some of your, more recent broadcasts. I know your latest one was at the late Leonard Nimoy's grave. Is that correct? In the last few days, I think.
Yeah. I try to do. I think my broadcasts come from a point of view of a journalist. So I try to educate and do broadcasts that I feel that are interesting to people. I go on camera sometimes. So most of my broadcasts, if you looked at the full body of all the stuff I've done, it's showing things, people, places, and things is the way I put it.
Right.
And so I kind of like to do those sorts of broadcasts where people, if they come to my broadcast, they'll learn something. They'll feel like, wow, this is amazing. This is fascinating information, and they're getting information about something. So
Right.
Leonard Nimoy, his birthday was just past. It was March 26th. March 26th, yeah. And so I figured, well, you would have been 90, and I'm only 20 minutes. I'm in Los Angeles, if folks don't know. I'm only 20 minutes away from Culver City. His burial site is there, his grave site is there. Why not go do a broadcast about Star Trek, Leonard Nimoy? I'm not a Star Trek fan, and sorry, I didn't mean that. I'm not a Star Trek expert. I'm not an expert. I've watched Star Trek movies and TV show, but other folks are really into it. And I thought, well, 90th birthday, people have been seeing the gravesite. It's a beautiful gravesite.
Yeah, looked like him.
See with the waterfall and all that. So I figured I'd go do a broadcast from there and talk about him a little bit, talk about Star Trek, and show where he's buried. So I did that last week. Few days ago on Happs. Yeah.
That's fascinating. I'd love to hear a little bit more about, how you take your journalist hat and bring that into the broadcasting experience here. What does that mean to you? Do you feel like you're a different person when you're in front of the camera as a journalist? If you were in front of a CBS, news crew getting interviewed, versus when you just have your phone out and you're talking to your audience? I mean, tell us about, what it means to you to be broadcaster as a journalist, because that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, when we do journalism, we always think about, as I mentioned before, people, places, and things. And that's the way I think. I always think, okay, like I'm looking at the Bucks building right now. I have a nice view. So I'm looking at the city of Los Angeles right now, and there's a building there that immediately caught my attention, and it's been there since 1929, I believe, in the 20s. It used to be a department store. Now it's a law school, and it's an Art Deco-ish kind of building. And immediately I think, what's up with that building? And I start doing my research, and there's always some history behind the places, the people. LA has. I'm looking at LA from south that way, northwest, west. I can see the Hollywood sign. I can see, and there's so much history I'm looking at, but you wouldn't know it until you start asking questions. And that's kind of the way I look at it. I see a building and I think that's an interesting looking building. Let me find out more about it. And then you come to find out things like, well, this is where some famous person lived or some famous writer or some. There's always history behind the people, obviously the places and the things that you see. And so that's my approach to it, bringing that to folks. So that's kind of how I do it. I'm going to do a broadcast soon about that building, the Bullocks building. Used to be, it was bought up by Macy's, and it's a long history about it. But a lot of celebrities shop. That's where the celebrities shopped. You know, the
That's
regular folks
interesting.
went to the other department stores, but the all the celebrities went to Bullocks. And then to my left is Good Sam Hospital. Lots of history right across the street from me. That's where Bobby Kennedy died. He was shot and killed,
Wow.
shot in LA, and
Mhm.
he was taken to the hospital there, and he died there. But that's where Madonna had her babies as well.
Wow.
And you only know that from just doing a lot of research about, that some people
Sure.
might think it's boring. But hey, I'm sorry, people are saying hello to me. I do. I shout out to do.
Totally. Yeah, let's not neglect the comments here. So great to see everyone greeting each other. Lots of familiar faces here. We had a question, Mike, that I want to get to. Was asking if you could go anywhere in the world right now that you haven't been, where would you go? Mike tends to travel.
Wow, where would I go? Well, I was going to New Zealand and Australia, and then I decided to do something a big secret. I'll tell everyone where I went. I never told anybody. I was
Wow.
going to Australia, and then I was looking at a temple. It's called the Five Pagoda Temple that's in Beijing, and the original is in India. And
Wow.
I didn't tell anybody. I switched plans, and I went to India, and
Wow.
nobody knew where I was. Gone for 2 weeks. I'm in India by myself. I'm going to visit this temple, and it was amazing. It was amazing because not even my family knew where I was. So
Wow.
just I had this beautiful experience at this temple with Buddhists and so on, and it was just amazing. But anyway, I was on my way to Australia and New Zealand because I had not been yet. I've been to every other continent except Antarctica, and I came this close to Antarctica when I missed
Oh,
the
really?
ship. Yeah, I was on my way to Antarctica. I was in Chile and then Argentina, and went to Ushuaia. Anyway, I hitchhiked down there. I missed the ship. I ended up missing the ships. I never made it, but it would be Australia/New Zealand. That's my plan.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have never traveled to those countries either. I would love to someday. Yeah, I know we have Louise Poppy here. Yes, speaking of New Zealand, Kia Ora, an amazing travel broadcaster here on Happs that I'm sure you know or recognize.
Yes, yeah. Luis, I'm coming to see you soon. And then of course the pandemic, because I put it off and I said, okay, I'll
That's
go.
right.
And then the pandemic, who was expecting a pandemic, right? So the
Yeah.
pandemic hits and shuts down everything, and of course
Hmm.
can't travel. So
Right, right. Mike, I'll tell you this. I don't think I've actually told anyone in the community this, but originally, before I joined HAPS, before the pandemic, I was planning to lead a student trip to 9 different countries in Asia for an entire academic year. And obviously, that didn't work out. But on the flip side, because that trip did not happen, I was able to join HAPS and connect with people internationally here on the platform and get to travel along, with Louise Poppy, for example, or Saki, I see from Japan, who's been sharing some really cool, cultural experiences with us too. But yeah, I'm also a huge traveler under normal times. I'm wondering for you, really, what has been the biggest impact? You're a travel aficionado. How have you been doing with all of the pandemic restrictions, and where do you see things going from here?
well, thankfully, I think things, at least in LA, and some parts of the U.S. are opening up. I actually traveled during the pandemic. I did it safely, though. I jumped in my car and I went traveling took a road trip around the U.S., Western U.S. mainly, and I went to hotels that were fairly empty, and they did the whole coronavirus, pandemic cleanup, situation. So it was pretty safe. And then I was in my car, and I try to keep away from people as much as possible. So I did that, and that was really cool. The year before, I had done cross country trip from New York to LA by car, and of course, it wasn't like a straight shot. I stopped and live stream a bunch of different places. But I think, fingers crossed, this year we should be able to. I'm fully vaccinated. I got the one shot, Johnson and Johnson, and hopefully this year, maybe toward the end of the year, I may be able to fulfill that and make it to Aussie land and New Zealand. New Zealand and Australia, Aussies, and so yeah, that's kind of the plan, is to travel again. I have friends all over the world. I have a private. I shouldn't say this because everyone is going to want to join, but I have a private travel group on Facebook. It's private. It's actually 200 plus people in it, but these 200 plus people, every single one of them, with maybe an exception of two people I met them all.
Wow.
And we talk about travel. We don't get into politics and all. It's all pure sharing information about travel. So they're all like, when are you coming to this? When are you coming? When? In different directions, So.
Sure. Yeah, man, it's certainly a weird time. Some parts of the world, like New Zealand, have had a lot of success controlling the outbreak of COVID. Obviously, other places, India, you just spoke of. My heart and thoughts and prayers go out to India right now. Is just confronted with a massive spike in caseloads and deaths. Just really, really horrible. Just weighing some of these sort of travel calculus now these days. Where do you think you'll be able to safely travel? In, I would say, normalcy. Is that going to be happening anytime soon globally? How has COVID changed things? Oh, did we lose Mike? We may have lost him. Let's see here. Asking a 30-minute question and we lost Mike. Oh no. Well, this is a good point to read some comments. So, yep, more than 3,000 miles on that trip. You must be talking about, Mike's road trip there. Michael, you traveled along in the U.S. You did make plenty of stops along the way, certainly. Dawn saying, I travel to not too many restrictions here in Europe. If there are, I do not notice them. Hey, CS, good to see you here. Miss Nikki, yes, prayers over India. And all with heavy hearts on many levels. Absolutely, absolutely. Right, buffering. I'm going to have to ping Mike and see what happened. I wonder if there was an internet outage or a device issue there. But, I guess I can ask you all, since you're still here, where would you travel if there were no restrictions, if, things were safe and the world was able to open up in a snap? Where would you go first and why? Let me know here in the comments while we're waiting for Mike to come back.
I'm back. Hello.
Oh, he's back. Awesome. Okay,
Sorry.
Let's bring him up here on screen.
I don't know what happened.
All good. Hey, we got you back.
I think it might have been my battery was down, done, and it didn't give me a warning. Sorry about that, guys.
No worries. Yeah. So I was just asking the audience, where would they travel if they could go anywhere, and have some really interesting answers here. Copenhagen. Let's see here.
Copenhagen.
New York City. Yeah. Cairo. Go to the pyramids. ER nurse Blondie says, I travel from the ER to my bed. Well, thank you for being a healthcare worker in these really pressing times. Yeah, we appreciate your service. Who else? Hello from Guadalajara. So thank you so much for tuning in. Great to see you. That would be a fun place to visit that I would love to travel to at some point. Let's see, Paris, Denmark. Yeah, still getting some answers coming in. Mike, while you were leaving, I was just asking, when do you think things will be back to normal? Will there be a normal again that we were used to pre-pandemic in terms of travel?
I don't think there's going to be a normal again. I think we're probably going to end up living with COVID like we live with the flu. It just, I mean, I think Dr. Fauci today was warning that, be careful. We might end up back to where we started. And I think it's because some people are still not getting vaccinated. I have friends I know who refuse to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
But and LA, we had zero for the first time. We had zero deaths. Yes, Sunday, and then Monday. I didn't check the rest of it, but nobody died in Los Angeles County. That's since last March. So we made progress here. But if you go across the border from California into Oregon, they're going in the opposite direction. So they're still kind of shutting down, even though in California we're making progress. Washington, I guess you're in Washington State,
right.
But I know Oregon.
So I used to be. I'm in Colorado now, but I know there's a fourth wave in Washington. I'm here for the summer. Yeah, out in western Colorado, getting some sunshine.
Cool. Yeah. So I don't know if we'll go back to full. It'll be a lot of years before I think we can even talk about being to fully whatever normal was before last year, 2020. I think so.
Right. And the voice of Happs in the comments says only 217 new reported cases in LA County yesterday. Wow. So thanks, Pablo, for sharing that latest statistic there. I hope everyone out there stays safe, protects themselves, gets the vaccine. Just from a personal standpoint, this isn't Happs' official position, but I encourage people to do so, so that we can get closer to what normal was in some ways, right? But it is worrisome to see people avoiding the vaccine, and if not enough people get the vaccine, then it doesn't actually become effective, and especially with these new variants, it's scary.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. When you have we live with the flu, and some people get the flu, and some people don't. Some people get the flu even when they get the shot. You know what I mean? Because there's different variants of the flu coming up. One year, I remember some people had the flu. It was crazy. So, and people die from the flu too. But I think there are things you can do to protect yourself. And you have to be willing to do that, and some people aren't. They think it's a hoax, as they put it, So anyway, it's become political. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no, it has, yeah. But would like to switch gears back towards some of your broadcasting. What are some of the memories that you have that really stand out to you as particularly exciting times when you were able to really connect with your audience in a unique location and share that experience and moment?
God, there's so many. I did before Happs, I was doing Periscope, and Periscope, I've done literally thousands of broadcasts on Periscope. But the ones that jump out at me immediately was being able to broadcast from the Forbidden City, for example. I've done that a few times. I've been to the Great Wall 16 times total. Not so much because I was like that into it, but because people would visit me and they'd want to go. So I go.
Sure.
So the Great Wall was amazing. The first broadcast I did from there was pretty good. And then when I went to the Jingshan Ling section of the Great Wall, Yellow Flower, that was pretty cool as well. And then going to the head of the Great Wall. I don't know if you guys know the Great Wall goes into the ocean. It starts at the one end into the ocean, and it's shaped like a dragon head. I broadcast that from there. a dragon with sort of his mouth open, drinking from the ocean. That's the beginning of the Great Wall. So stuff like that,
Very cool. I've never
Thailand.
seen that, so you got me interested to go check that one out. That still is
Yeah,
floating out there.
that was cool. Yeah. So, but gosh, I don't know. Maybe some of the folks remember the ones that they liked. I sometimes forget because there's a lot of them.
Right. I'm putting a top commenter, Heavenly Dews, comment on the screen. I think I started following you in Beijing 2015 or 16. So some longtime fans here in the comments, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 15. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So
Cool.
yeah, so that was then, and then I did a lot of them when I came back to the U.S. I did some from New York. New York had a lot of really interesting things. Like I did the oldest manhole cover in New York. Stuff that people wouldn't think it's interesting, but I found out it was a manhole cover. Like it was like the oldest in New York City, and it was still there. But there was so much history to it. That I went and I found it. I don't know how I found it, but I found it. And or the smallest private property in New York City, it's like a triangle, and it's because the Hearst, I believe it's the Hearst family that owned it, and the New York City took their property by eminent domain, but they didn't take that little triangle, so that still belonged to the family. So there's a little square. So this is the smallest private property in the U.S. they say, but I don't know if that's the U.S. But
that's fascinating. You have all these interesting, historical tidbits from your travels and from your broadcasting. I love these. We have a question I want to get to from Lady Boss, who says, "My favorite activity traveling is food. What was the most unique meal you've had?"
God, unique. I'd have to say China. China has, well, they shut it down now, is my understanding, but it has all this area with the food like snakes, bugs, like stuff you can eat, like just people. It's just to some people would be gross, but they sell like bugs on a stick, fried bugs, fried worms and all that stuff. And I did eat scorpion, fried scorpion. Wow. But it was just awful. I mean, to be honest, it was just the worst thing. It was just crunchy and it was just the hard shell. I don't know why people even bother eating it. There was no meat to it. It was just shell.
It's for the bragging rights, I'm sure. Yeah.
But, and it's on a skewer, and it's
yeah. I remember
I ate ants in Colombia. Hormigas culonas, they call it. And the reason culonas is because these ants have like big butts. So you fry them. So I ate ants there. And I ate guinea pig in Peru.
Wow. So those are clearly all, local delicacies there. That's pretty amazing. Yeah. Wow. Good question, by the way. Good question. Mike, I know we have to let you go in just another minute or two here. I want to thank you for your time. Are there any final questions for Mike that you have here? This has been a broadcaster profile here. On Wednesdays, we're trying this for a change to get to know broadcasters individually in a little bit more depth than some of the roundtables allow. So yeah, some reactions to all of those unique foods that you sampled there. Will kindly decline the bugs on a skewer offer. Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah, sounds awful, says another commenter, Joe. Oh man. Vince, glad you're liking it. Any final questions? Mike, maybe I'll ask one. What can we expect coming up for new broadcasts in the future here? You mentioned one particular building of historical significance in LA that you're thinking of doing a broadcast soon. And is that the next one that people can expect?
Yeah, probably, unless I get something else in my brain to do something else. But yeah, I've been doing my research on that building. I'm looking at it now. It's a beautiful looking Art Deco building that it stands out among all the other buildings around it. But beyond that, I'm hoping we can really start traveling. I'm working from home for a year now.
Wow.
So I don't really need to be in the office, and I'm told we probably won't be going back to the office until maybe all July, August, into the fall. So I can get in my car and drive anywhere. So I'm contemplating another road trip, and
Nice.
I would do that. I would definitely live stream that, a different area of the country, but maybe Canada. I'm thinking Canada. It just depends on how things are with the pandemic.
Yep. Yep. Hard to plan too far in advance. That's for sure. Well, great. Thank you so much for everyone.
To Nancy. Nancy's asking, we're still waiting for you down under. You missed my comments about down under, Nancy, but I am coming in some point, hopefully.
Nice. Yeah, you should come out to Colorado at some point. Mike can show you around. Want to just thank
I was there
everyone.
last year.
Oh yeah, where were you in Colorado?
All over the place, but all over Colorado, because that was one of my travels, the looping around. Ended up in Denver, where it was in the middle of summer and it was 100 degrees one day, and then the next day it was snowing, a snowstorm.
That's bizarre.
Yeah.
Man.
So I broadcasted it and everything. Hey, look, it's snowing. Then the snow left. It didn't last long, and then the warm weather came back.
That sounds like Denver. Yeah, that's for sure. It can be 110 one day, and then squirrely certainly up in the mountains. A couple of questions here. Have you traveled to Pakistan or Dubai? Asked Swift Beats.
At what?
Have you traveled to Pakistan or Dubai?
I've been to Pakistan because I went there for a wedding years ago. A friend of mine who worked, well, he was an intern at the Oregonian. Then he went back to Pakistan and he got married. So I went to Pakistan. Dubai, I have a friend who lives in Oregon and he's from Dubai. And we're supposed to go again. This pandemic just threw everything off. But in December, we're going. That's the plan anyway.
Nice.
So December, I have friends there.
That's great. That's great. Well, I want to let you go and try to keep close to the 30-minute slot that we originally signed you up for. And I know you're on deadline, hardworking journalist. Everyone do subscribe to Mike Tends to Travel. Michael Audie here. Very grateful for your time. Thanks so much for joining us today, Mike.
Thank you. You're welcome. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Bye, everybody.
Our pleasure. Yeah, we will see you all soon. Actually, tomorrow on the Happs account here, we will be having our updates and Q&A in the morning on Thursday morning Pacific time. So we'll see you then. Appreciate everyone who tuned in and asked questions. This is really fun to have your questions answered by Mike and the guests here on these broadcaster profiles. So stay tuned and we will see you soon, everyone. Have a great evening or afternoon or morning, wherever it is, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Take it easy. Thanks again, Mike.